You think they've forgotten you, that the chapter ended and their thoughts moved on. But the truth is, they haven't, not even close. Every memory, every interaction, every subtle victory you unknowingly held over them lingers, and it gnaws at the part of them that can never fully accept loss. If you want to understand exactly how a narcissist processes your absence and why they may never truly move on, stay with me, because the next part reveals the hidden thought patterns that psychologists call narcissistic fixation. Even when a narcissist knows they can never return, their mind remains unusually fixated on past interactions, often in obsessive and repetitive ways. This isn't a healthy reflection or genuine curiosity about your life. It's a relentless mental replay designed to understand, control, and rationalize what they lost. Every conversation, every argument, every moment where they felt either powerful or challenged becomes a scene they scrutinize over and over. They mentally dissect your actions and their own responses, asking themselves why things unfolded the way they did. In their internal narrative, they are always trying to regain a sense of superiority or avoid acknowledging failure. This obsessive reflection often focuses on the times you held your ground, the moments you were independent, or the subtle ways you revealed your autonomy. These memories are threatening to them because they shatter the carefully constructed image of being in control. Even if they never express it outwardly, this mental processing can dominate their thoughts, sometimes for months or even years. The fixation isn't about understanding you in a meaningful way. It's about maintaining their own sense of power and making sense of a loss they cannot accept. They may rewrite scenarios in their mind to preserve their self-image, exaggerate your perceived flaws, or replay imagined moments where they could have regained dominance. This obsessive reflection acts as both punishment and fascination. They are tormented by your absence while simultaneously unable to stop thinking about the very person who reminded them that their control was never absolute. In short, your memory becomes a mental puzzle they cannot solve, endlessly occupying their attention even when the relationship is irretrievably over. When a narcissist thinks about you after knowing they can never return, they are caught in a constant tension between the idealized version of you they created in their mind and the reality that disrupted that fantasy. In their perspective, you were never fully seen as a separate, autonomous person. Instead, you existed as a reflection of their desires, a character in the story they wrote about themselves. When the relationship ends, or they cannot come back, this carefully constructed illusion collides with reality, and that collision is deeply unsettling. They struggle to reconcile the flawless, perfect image they held of you with the actual person who made choices, set boundaries, or demonstrated independence. Every memory is filtered through this lens of idealization versus reality. If they remember moments of vulnerability or authenticity on your part, these often get distorted or minimized in their mind, because acknowledging them fully would mean admitting that their perception was flawed. At the same time, the gap between the fantasy and reality haunts them. They may privately oscillate between admiration and frustration, longing and resentment, always comparing the person they imagined with the person who exists. This internal conflict is part of why they remain mentally preoccupied with you long after separation. Your existence outside of their control highlights the imperfection of their fantasy and exposes their inability to fully dominate the narrative, leaving them both fascinated and unsettled. They are trapped in the tension between what they wanted you to be and what you actually are, and that unresolved conflict fuels ongoing obsession and mental preoccupation. When a narcissist thinks about you after they can never return, nearly everything they consider is filtered through the lens of protecting their self-image. Their primary goal is always to maintain the illusion that they are superior, in control, and flawless. So any thought about you is instantly evaluated based on how it affects that fragile self-perception. Even if they privately acknowledge moments where they lost influence or made mistakes, they reinterpret these events in a way that preserves their sense of power. For example, if you acted independently or refused to cater to their demands, they might mentally twist it into a narrative where your choices were insignificant, misguided, or even proof that you were somehow flawed. This filtering isn't about understanding your perspective. It's about shielding their ego from the uncomfortable truth that they were not omnipotent in the relationship. It allows them to think about you without confronting the vulnerability and failure inherent in losing control over someone who mattered to them. In some cases, this mental self-protection leads them to exaggerate your weaknesses or downplay your strengths, so that even in your absence, they can convince themselves they are still dominant in some way. The paradox is that the more they attempt to protect their self-image, the more they obsess over you, because you remain a living reminder that they could not fully control the situation. Your continued autonomy and success quietly challenge the narrative they cling to, forcing them into an endless loop of mental rationalization and defensive reinterpretation. When a narcissist thinks about you after knowing they can never come back, their emotions often shift between subtle regret and deep-seated resentment. They rarely experience regret in the genuine self-reflective sense most people do. Instead, any sense of loss is tightly intertwined with their need to preserve self-esteem and dominance. They may feel a quiet sting over losing influence or access to you, especially if your absence highlights that you exercised autonomy they could not control. This regret is rarely about missing your presence or caring for you. It's about the lost opportunity to reinforce their power and maintain the image of being indispensable. Alongside this is resentment, often aimed not at themselves, but at you for leaving, for existing independently, and for demonstrating that their control was never complete. They mentally replay scenarios where you could have chosen them, wondering why you didn't, and every memory reinforces the narrative that you slipped out of their grasp, challenging their sense of supremacy. This mixture of regret and resentment becomes a constant internal tension. Regret keeps them fixated on what they lost, while resentment protects their ego by framing the loss as someone else's failure. Even when they cannot act on these thoughts or return, this emotional push and pull keeps your memory alive in their mind, creating an ongoing obsessive preoccupation. In essence, what appears as regret is really a narcissistic calculation. They weigh the loss of control against the need to remain untouchable, and your absence becomes a haunting reminder of the one person they couldn't bend to their will. When a narcissist thinks about you after they can never return, one of their strongest mental habits is comparative evaluation. They constantly measure anyone new against you, even if they would never admit it openly. This isn't a genuine interest in other people. It's a benchmark exercise, a way to remind themselves of the standards they failed to impose or the control they couldn't maintain. Every potential replacement, every interaction with someone else is secretly filtered through your memory. Does this person have the same qualities? Could they ever challenge me the way you did? Could they inspire the same level of fascination or fear? In their mind, no one ever quite measures up, and that gap fuels both obsession and frustration. They may attempt to convince themselves that others are better or easier, but the comparison is automatic, relentless, and unavoidable. Your presence, now absent, becomes the mental yardstick for their entire social and emotional world. This is why they often revisit your traits, your choices, and your reactions repeatedly, evaluating them against new encounters. It isn't admiration in the pure sense. It's a subtle, ego-driven obsession, a constant internal ranking system where you remain at the top because you were the one person they could never fully dominate or predict. The more they fail to find someone who measures up, the more your memory lingers, haunting their thoughts and reinforcing the psychological imprint you left, a reminder of both your uniqueness and their inability to control the outcome. Even when a narcissist can never return, their mind continues to run control fantasies, playing out scenarios where they still influence you or shape your life from afar. These are not conscious, deliberate plans to act. They are mental exercises that let them feel powerful without actually confronting reality. They imagine situations where they could call you, see you struggle, or prove that they were right all along. They may replay conversations and interactions, inventing moments where they regain authority or where you should have responded differently. These fantasies serve multiple purposes. They soothe the ego, temporarily restore a sense of dominance, and allow the narcissist to feel like the center of your life even in their absence. The scenarios can be elaborate, imagining that you are thinking about them, missing them, or making mistakes that validate their superiority. This mental preoccupation is often cyclical. The more they indulge in these imagined interactions, the more their obsession with you persists. It's important to understand that this is not genuine care or concern. It's about power, influence, and the illusion of control. Even without the possibility of real-life contact, they are unable to stop these internal rehearsals because your independence directly challenges their need to be in command. In effect, every day that you live your life without them, their mind creates countless alternate realities where that is not the case, keeping your presence central to their internal world. These control fantasies are a silent, persistent form of obsession, revealing how much your autonomy unsettles and fascinates them simultaneously. When a narcissist knows they can never come back, they experience intense cognitive dissonance. an inner conflict between the reality of the loss and the story they tell themselves about their invulnerability and superiority. On one hand, they are forced to confront the fact that they cannot control you, cannot bend circumstances to their will, and cannot reclaim the influence they once had. On the other hand, their self-image demands that they appear flawless, untouchable, and always in command. This clash creates a mental tension that is difficult, if not impossible, for them to resolve. To manage it, they engage in constant rationalization, rewriting the past and minimizing the importance of your absence, all while secretly obsessing over what they cannot change. Every memory of you becomes a reminder of their failure to dominate, and every imagined scenario reinforces the uncomfortable truth that they were not omnipotent. The more they attempt to preserve their invulnerable persona, the more their mind fixates on you, because your independence directly contradicts the narrative they rely on to feel superior. Cognitive dissonance in this context doesn't lead to self-growth or insight. Instead, it amplifies obsession, rumination, and mental preoccupation. Your life without them, your choices, and your autonomy constantly highlight the gap between their fantasy of omnipotence and reality, keeping you at the center of their thoughts long after the possibility of return has vanished. In essence, your very existence outside their control fuels a relentless internal conflict that they cannot escape. When a narcissist realizes they can never return, your absence becomes a persistent emotional echo in their mind. It isn't about missing you in a healthy relational sense. It's about the discomfort of knowing they cannot fully dominate or predict someone they once invested energy in controlling. Every time they think of you, there's an involuntary recognition of a loss they cannot rationalize away, a subtle, lingering proof that their influence was never absolute. Even years later, your choices, successes, and independence trigger mental and emotional reminders of this inability to fully command the situation. These emotional echoes are unpredictable. They can emerge suddenly when something in their environment, a conversation, a social media post, or even a memory, reminds them of you. Rather than motivating them to grow or reflect, these echoes often reinforce obsession, idealization, and lingering resentment. Your presence in their mind serves as a silent challenge, highlighting that one person existed who could resist them, maintain autonomy, and live unaffected by their need for control. In essence, even when they are physically absent, your impact resonates like a shadow, quietly unsettling them, forcing mental comparisons, and fueling private fascination. This is why narcissists can never truly move on, because the emotional imprint you leave is a constant reminder of the one person they could not fully own or control, and your freedom becomes both an unspoken punishment and an enduring point of fixation. They are caught between the idealized version of you they created in their mind and the reality they could never control, and that tension fuels endless mental preoccupation. Even without contact, your existence echoes in their mind, shaping thoughts and fantasies, challenging their narrative of invulnerability, and reinforcing the one truth they cannot escape: they lost a person they could never truly possess. In this way, you remain an unspoken authority over their internal world, the standard against which all others are measured, and the persistent reminder that for all their strategies and self-deceptions, they were not omnipotent. Their inability to come back does not erase you. It immortalizes your presence in their private psychological landscape.